everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Huck. Today we are doing a recommendations for if you like this, try this, which is a style of video that I have been meaning to do for a very long time because I love recommendations like this. I love watching other people's versions of this where you go, you know, if you like this book or these elements of this book, then you may also like this other book that has similar elements to it. So been meaning to do this for a long time, finally getting around to it. So let's get into it. Most of the books that I have today are adult fantasy, except for this first pairing, which is maybe more in like a literary fiction genre. I'm not exactly sure. I think a lot of times the way these recommendations are set up is like, if you like this more popular book, then you should also try this less well-known book. Some of these I don't really know which of these is more popular than the other. I guess I could have looked up on Goodreads which one has more reviews, but it's too late now. I've already started the video. So some of these, I'm not sure which one is more well-known or not, but my first pairing is, if you liked Crossings by Alex Landrigan, then you might like Arcadia by Ian Pearce. So Crossings is a book about books. It's a book about storytelling. In this, it starts out with a bookbinder who is given a manuscript of 3 short stories and asked to bind them together. And then the rest of the book is that manuscript. So it is these 3 short stories, and each story is a little bit, feels like a bit of a different genre. Like there's one that's kind of historical fiction, that's like a World War II historical fiction. There's one that takes place on an island and there are people with like mind power, so it's a little bit more fantasy. And there are 2 different ways to read this book. You can either read it in the conventional way, which is just cover to cover, in which case you're reading each individual story and they are like minimally connected at all. Or you can read the Baroness sequence, which guides you through kind of jumping around throughout the book and weaves all 3 stories together into one cohesive story and shows how they are connected. So Arcadia, on the other hand, is also a book about books, book about storytelling. It also has multiple stories in kind of different genres, and that are kind of woven together, or can be read separately. So in this we have 3 stories that we're following. One is like a historical fiction about this man who wants to be an author, and he's like friends with this little girl who lives next door who comes and like feeds his cat, and then she finds maybe like a portal to another world in his basement. Then there is a kind of fantasy world where their culture and religion is very much based around storytelling. It kind of has a Robin Hood feel to this plot line, and is also loosely retelling a Shakespeare play. And then we have like a sci-fi story that is set in this sort of dystopian future where they were following a scientist who is trying to develop a technology and realizing that that technology may be very dangerous and they have to keep it from the bad authorities. So there are these 3 stories that we're following, that the way this book is set up, we are already kind of going between each story and we don't really see how they're connected until the very end. But there's actually an app that goes with this book that shows you how to read each story as an individual story if you wanted to just read the sci-fi story or just read the historical fiction story. So I think that if you either liked Crossings or, like me, liked the premise of it but did not really enjoy the execution or was underwhelmed by the execution, then you might like Arcadia because it has some very similar elements to it, but I think it was very much executed more successfully in this one. So this is one that I wouldn't necessarily recommend going the other direction. Like if you liked Arcadia, would not recommend Crossings, but if you liked this or liked the concept and were underwhelmed, I would recommend this. Okay, so now we are on to the actual fantasy recommendations. So my first one in this category is that if you liked Foundryside by Robert Jackson Bennett, then you might like The Bone Shard Daughter by Andrea Stewart. So Foundryside is a fantasy that is set in a world where they have a type of magic that is called scriving magic, where you're able to essentially write things onto objects to like reprogram them to act against their nature. So there is a way of, it's kind of like magical coding, and it is able to bend reality in certain ways and animate inanimate objects or constructs that they have created and convince inanimate objects to like act counter to their nature. The story in this is essentially a heist. We start out following a thief, and then over time she kind of collects this unlikely band of people, and they have to save reality essentially. And it's very fun and has a very interesting magic system. In The Bone Shard Daughter, we have a type of magic that is called bone shard magic, where bone shards are used to, you're able to write on a bone shard certain instructions that can then animate a construct, which in this case constructs are usually kind of patched together from different, like the bodies of different animals, and then they are animated by the magic of this bone shard that has like instructions written on it. The only thing about that is that because this bone shard comes from a person, it is essentially that person's life force that is animating this construct, and so as the bone shard is used, it drains the life away from the person that the bone shard came from. In this, we're following multiple perspectives. Our main character is the daughter of the emperor. In this world, the emperor is the only person who's able to use the bone shard magic. His daughter years ago had an illness that caused her to lose her memory, and now the emperor is refusing to teach her how to use bone shard magic until she regains her memory. And so she is determined to either get her memory back or just teach herself how to use bone shard magic. So she's the main character, but we also get perspectives from like this one man who becomes kind of an accidental folk hero. And then there's some other people that we follow as well. There's like a rebellion brewing in one area. And in this first book, we don't really see, we kind of see each of these stories individually, and it's only towards the end that we see them like maybe starting to converge. I have not read the second book yet, but I think that if you like this type of magic that involves like animating either inanimate objects or constructs through this type of written magic, giving them instructions that sort of bend reality, then you might like these. They also both have kind of a subplot, or maybe it will become a main plot, of certain magical experiments being done on people, which give them certain powers that they did not want or may not know about until later on. So they both have elements of that, and they both, I think this one will eventually have kind of this band of characters working together, I believe. This one, the story is that this band of characters comes together and is like doing this heist to save reality. The magic in this one is definitely much more explained than it is in this one, so it depends on what kind of magic, what level of explanation you're looking for. So like if you liked this but wished the magic was more thoroughly explained, then you might like this. If you read this one and felt like you were getting bogged down in like the details of the magic, you might like that this one has cool magic but a little bit less detailed explanation. Okay, so from here I have a little bit of like bookish triangulating or bookish math that's like, if you liked this book plus this book, then you might like this other book. So hopefully this will make sense. So first up we have, if you liked Robin Hobb's Realm of the Elderlings and you like Naomi Novik's fairy tale retellings, then you might also like the Sevenwaters series by Juliet Morillier. So let me explain a little bit about this. So first of all, this is a later book in the series. This is just the closest Hobb book I had on hand. But Robin Hobb's books, the first series starts out with following Fitz, who is the bastard son of the king in waiting. When his existence is discovered, he is brought to Buck Keep to be raised and trained as a royal assassin. And that has mixed results. But one of the things that I like most about this series is I really enjoy Hobb's writing. I just think it's very descriptive, and I just think she is a really good like writer. I also really enjoy this world, and I think her characters are very interesting. I think she approaches them with a kind of the lens of like it's like a character study, you know, where we're really getting deep into the experiences and thoughts of these characters, and they definitely go through some very difficult things, and we get to see them deal with that and also really deal with like the repercussions of the traumas that they go through, and have many of them have PTSD and things like that. So the approach to like really exploring character is one of the things I enjoy about her books. Now, Naomi Novik's fairy tale retellings. Uprooted is a very loose retelling of Beauty and the Beast, and also has a malicious sentient forest in it, so there are some really good like forest vibes to it. Spinning Silver is a loose retelling of Rumpelstiltskin and has some very like cold, icy atmosphere to it. Some of the things that I enjoy about her books, I like that she takes fairy tale stories and really retells them in a new way. Like she really creates her own story based on the structure of the fairy tale, so it's not a real direct one-to-one retelling. I like that her books definitely have atmosphere to them, especially love foresty atmosphere, and I like that her stories you know, have strong female characters in them who are not necessarily strong because they're warriors, but because of their strength of character, you know, because they are determined, because they're clever, because they, you know, want to protect the people that they love, things like that. So I really enjoy those elements about her books. Now, the Sevenwaters series, which the first one is Daughter of the Forest. This is the first book in the series is a retelling of Six Swans. So this is historical fantasy set in early medieval Ireland about the family of Sevenwaters. In the first book, we're following Sorcha, who is the youngest daughter of 7 children. She has 6 older brothers. When she was born, her mother dies. And so she's pretty much raised by her brothers and is very close with them. When her father remarries, they find out that the woman he married is like an evil sorceress who wants to take over, and so she turns all of Sorcha's brothers into swans. And then Sorcha has to go through various trials in order to turn them back and save her brothers. Some of the things that I especially love about this series, honestly, like Juliet Morillier is one of my favorite authors of all time. This is my favorite series by her, so I always got to work her in wherever I can, and there's so many things that I love about this series, but some of them are like she has absolutely beautiful atmospheric writing that is descriptive but not overly detailed. I think that she writes characters really beautifully and character relationships, and her characters have a lot of like depth and nuance to them. And I think that she also writes strong female characters who are strong because of their character, not because they are warriors. She also incorporates a lot of folklore into her stories. Even when they are not direct fairy tale retellings, they have this very like folkloric wisdom to them, and they have this very cozy feel, even though her characters do go through some very difficult stuff. And I think that her books also really deal with the repercussions of the difficult things that they go through and the PTSD and things like that that her characters experience. So those are some of the things that you can see, connections that I think if you like Hobb's writing, you probably will like Morillier's writing as well. If you like the kind of character depth, character study, seeing characters go through something difficult and actually deal with their trauma and their experiences, then I think you would like this. But I also think that honestly, Juliet Morillier writes female characters better, I would say, than Robin Hobb. I also think that she deals with violence against women, and especially like sexual assault, better than the way that Hobb deals with it. And as I said, I really like the way she writes strong female characters, kind of in a similar vein of what I like about Naomi Novik's books, that it is because they are, you know, clever and resourceful because of their dedication and love for their families, and they will sacrifice what they must to protect those that they love, and they're just very like determined. It is their internal strength that makes them a strong character. We also get, you know, the fairy tale retelling of inclusion of folklore and also atmosphere are connections that I see between these as well. So if you like Hobb and Novik, then you might want to try Juliet Morillier. My next recommendation is if you have already read the Sevenwaters series and you are looking for something similar, then you might want to try the Lost Queen series by Signe Pike. So the Lost Queen series is historical fiction with a little bit of magic in it. It is set in early medieval Scotland. We are following Langoreth, who is the sister of the man who inspired the story of Merlin. So in history, there was a person that they believe inspired the story of Merlin. He had a sister who was a queen, but very little is known about her. And so this is Signe Pike kind of expanding on that character and trying to imagine who she might have been and what her life may have been like. So in this, we are following Langoreth, who is the daughter of a minor king. Her mother has died, and she has grown up very close with her brother Lailoken. Langoreth really would love to be a healer and, you know, follow the druidic religion and the old ways, but this is set in a time when Christianity is coming into the country and kind of trying to push out the old ways and the druidic practices, and in order to, because she is the daughter of a minor king, and in order to protect her people, she will have to be married into a political marriage, which she really does not want to do. So we're following her throughout her life as she has to make a lot of difficult choices and sacrifices in order to really protect her people and try to preserve the old ways and preserve their way of life as best she can. So this is probably the most similar thing that I have found to the Sevenwaters series. They have some clear connections to them. This is set in early medieval Ireland. This is set in early medieval Scotland. They're both set at a time when Christianity is coming into the country and starting to push out the old religion and the old ways and their druidic practices. I think that is a more central plot line in this one than it is in this one, but it definitely is part of a subplot of the Sevenwaters series. So they both involve a druidic spirituality and a real connection to nature as a part of their spirituality. They both are beautifully written, they're very atmospheric and have great like forest atmosphere in them, and a real like magical spiritual connection to the forest. And again, these are ones that have strong female characters because of their internal strength, which I really love about them. So if you have read and enjoyed Daughter of the Forest and are looking for something similar, this is the most similar thing that I have personally found. Okay, so now we have my last like kind of triangulation. I have three books that I kind of think that if you like one, then you might like these other two. So we're gonna go in order of most popular to least popular. This is one that I feel pretty confident in, like which is the most well-known and which is the least well-known. So most well-known, we have Priory of the Orange Tree by Samantha Shannon. So if you like Priory of the Orange Tree, I think you would probably also like The Jasmine Throne by Tasha Suri. And if you like The Jasmine Throne, I think you would probably like the Innislere duology by Tessa Grattan. So let's start with Priory of the Orange Tree and the Jasmine Throne. Priory of the Orange Tree, honestly, it's gonna be a little bit hard for me to summarize what this book is about, partially because it's giant, partially because this is honestly my least favorite of the three. But this is set in a world where in their history there was like an evil dragon that was essentially trying to take over the world. That dragon was stopped and trapped. There are differing opinions about how that happened, but the two main like cultures that we're following are the East and the West. So the culture that is in the East believes that there's a difference between water dragons and fire dragons. Fire dragons are evil, water dragons are not, and so they maintain a relationship with water dragons and even train dragon riders to ride water dragons. In the West, they believe that all dragons are bad, and so the East and the West have not communicated with each other for generations. Also in the West, they believe that one of their saints is the one that defeated this evil dragon, and that as long as one of the descendants of this saint remains on the throne, they will be protected from this dragon. However, it is they're starting to get some hints that this evil dragon may be coming back, and one of those hints is that there is this like dragon plague spreading throughout the world. We're following four main characters in this. To be perfectly honest, I think two of those main perspectives are kind of pointless. The two main perspectives are Eid and Tane. So Tane is the one that is in the East, and she's being trained as a dragon rider. And then Eid is actually from like a secret society that I think is from the North, but she has been sent to the West to protect the queen, just in case the story about the descendants of that saint staying on the throne are true. They want to protect her. There ends up being a sapphic romance between Eid and this queen. We get a lot about the history of this world and really trying to figure out like what is true and what is myth, what actually happened, who is correct about the events so many generations ago. Now, if you liked this, I think you would probably also like the Jasmine Throne. This is the first book in a fantasy series based on or inspired by Indian culture. So in this, we are following two main characters. One is Princess Malini, who her brother is the ruler of this land, and at the beginning of the book he wants her to throw herself on a pyre and die in order to prove her purity for his like religious convictions. She doesn't want to do that, and so as punishment she is sent to this like abandoned crumbling temple on the top of a mountain to either learn the error of her ways or die up there. The other main character that we're following is Priya, who is a maidservant at a house at the base of the mountain, and because there is now a princess living up there, some of the maidservants from this place go up there like once a week to take care of the temple and prepare food for her. And that is how the two of them meet. But Priya also has a kind of mysterious past and connection to this temple, and she may have been a member of a magical secret society. And when she meets Malini, Malini sees her as an opportunity to escape, but the two of them develop a romance. So some of the things that are similar between the two of these, other than both being yellow, they both have, you know, political elements to these fantasy worlds. We're following two main characters, one of whom is from a like secret society. They both have a sapphic romance, and in both cases the sapphic romance is not like the central story of the book, which is something that some people really didn't like about Priory of the Orange Tree, but some people liked it, that it wasn't like the main and only thing going on. That is also the case in The Jasmine Throne. It's more of a subplot, but these characters definitely have other motives that are really driving their decisions. So if you liked that element of this, you might like this as well. Both of these are set in worlds, you know, where there are plagues going on. This has a type of plague where that's connected to like the plant life, where you can start to have like plants growing out of your body until you're completely consumed by plants. So I think some of it also was just like vibes, you know. I have a feeling that if you liked this, then you would probably also like this. Okay, then if you like The Jasmine Throne, you might like the Innislere duology by Tessa Gratton, especially the second book, Lady Hotspur. So the Innislere duology, the first book is The Queens of Innislere, the second one is Lady Hotspur. These are both Shakespeare retellings. So this is a retelling of King Lear told from the perspective of the three daughters. So there is a king on Innislere, which is this magical sentient island, who has three daughters. He has to choose which one will succeed him. His two oldest daughters hate him because they believe that he killed their mother. The two of them are very ambitious and want to take over the island from their father. And then the youngest daughter does not believe that her father killed their mother. She loves her father very much, and is not a very ambitious person. She is a priestess and really just wants to be left alone to read prophecies in the stars, be a priestess, and take care of her father. But that's not in the cards for her, or not in the stars for her. Lady Hotspur is a retelling of Henry IV, but it's like a gender-bent queer retelling of Henry IV. So in this, we are following Prince Hal, who is a lady knight. In this, they use titles like king and prince as gender-neutral titles. So in this, we are following three main characters. One of them is Prince Hal, who she and her mother have just at the beginning of this have just done like a coup to take over the country. This is set in a different, this is set on the mainland. This is set on the island off the mainland. But they've just enacted a coup. One of the other characters is Banamora, who was the prince of the just overthrown family, but who has been friends with Hal for a long time, so that strains their relationship. And then the other main character is Lady Hotspur, who is another lady knight. So a lot of this is dealing with the fallout of this coup, both politically and personally for these characters. This takes place about 100 years after the first book. This is a companion duology, so technically you could read this without having read the first book. I think that you probably should read the first book first, because the world will make a little bit more sense, and if you want it, you might be spoiled for a couple of things if you read this one first. But this is kind of the one that I really see the connection, that if you liked The Jasmine Throne, then you might like this, because it is another one that involves, it has a lot of like politics of this world, both, as I was saying, on the like real political level, but also on a very personal level for these. In this first book, the politics of this are much more on the like familial level. It is much more of a family drama of like who is going to succeed the king. But also, this also has a sapphic romance in it, and if you were disappointed in Priory of the Orange Tree or The Jasmine Throne that the sapphic romance was more of a subplot and not a central part of the story, then you might want to try Lady Hotspur, because one of the main pieces of this story is this star-crossed lovers sapphic romance between two lady knights, Prince Hal and Lady Hotspur. And so if you wanted that element of the story to be more central, along with all of the like politics and everything about this world, then you might enjoy this. I think that also, if you liked the foresty elements of The Jasmine Throne and you want that like turned up, then you might like the Innislere books, especially for that element, the Queens of Innislere, because this takes place almost entirely on the island of Innislere, which is covered in forest. It has a sentient forest that people can speak to the trees and communicate, like commune with the island, and is just like, this book is just like peak nature vibes. It is incredibly beautifully written. It has an almost poetic style of writing, but if you love like forest atmosphere, this one is just like peak nature vibes. This one partially takes place on Innislere, so you will still get some of that in this one as well, but it also takes place partially on the mainland, which doesn't have as much of that. But yes, if you liked the foresty vibes and wanted more of it, would definitely recommend these two. Okay, so those are all of my if you like this, try that recommendations. I would love to know if what you thought of these. You know, if there are any of them where you've like read both books in the comparison. Do you agree that they are a good read alike or a good comparison? Or I would also love to know if there is a read alike or a, you know, if you like this, try this, that you are like dying to tell somebody. I would love to know what your favorite comparison of two books would be. But thank you all for watching, and until next time, bye.